Hi, and welcome to A Boulder View. I'm Carl Castillo. In the first segment of the show, I'll be speaking with Councilmember Lisa Morzel about the recently approved West Trail Study Area Plan, a 10-year strategy to balance the need to preserve and protect the natural resources and cultural resources of the city's westernmost open space, with the need to maintain and improve the visitor experience of those lands. In the second half of the show, Jody Jacobson will be speaking with Val Matheson about city efforts to manage bears and mountain lions in our community. But first, here with me now is Councilmember Lisa Morzel. Lisa,
Hi, Carl.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, can't imagine a better council member to speak to about this topic. I know you have a great amount of passion when it comes to open space.
I do.
So let's start off by having you explain, what is this land in the West TSA? Where is it and why is it special?
Okay, so where it is, it's basically all of our acquired open space from west of Boulder, and its northern boundary would be Linden Avenue, and its southern boundary would be El Dorado Springs. So it's this diverse piece of land that basically goes from our plains all the way to our mountain backdrop. It is our largest trail study area of the four that we have: west, north, east, and south. And it's also the most heavily visited. It probably has the most diverse cultural and natural resources, so it's very, very special.
And it's also probably the most spectacular backdrop when people first see it. That's the land we're talking about,
absolutely,
isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And everybody loves this. And it's the symbol of Boulder. I mean, look at, here we have it right here behind you.
Is there any unique ecological values that are presented there?
Oh, I think, you know, we have arbor squirrels, how do they call them? Aber squirrels, and then different bird species, different rare grasses. We've got mountain lions, bears, all kinds of different wildlife. Yeah. It is almost, and people talked about it in the discussion that led up to our decision, as almost the national park status of our open space properties.
I've heard that and that's a very interesting way to refer to it. Some people who move to Boulder feel that they have moved to the outskirt of a national park.
That's right. It's almost better than outskirt of a national park.
So one of the things that I heard, one of the phrases I heard, was that people are loving this area to death. So what does that mean? Is that suggesting that it's being used so intensely that the ecological integrity is being compromised?
I think we want to look at that. We have an estimated 5 to 5.5 million visits per year, which is greater than Rocky Mountain National Park. You know, when you look at, we have 48,000 acres. Rocky Mountain National Park is much larger. I can't say exactly how large it is. I know in Yellowstone, where I work, it's 2 million acres, and they have about 3.5 million visitors a year. So you put that in comparison, we have much more visitor use here on our open space lands than we do on many of our national park lands.
And one of the things I know that was spoken about is the fact that many of these users are people who don't live in the city of Boulder, but they come here to use this property. Is that something that concerns the city, or is that something that's part of the plan?
Well, you know, it comes into, you know, the ecological integrity of the land, but also one of the things we were trying to achieve here was recreational opportunities and enjoyment, and making sure that people who were gaining access and having access to the open space were having an experience that was a pleasurable and memorable one. Sure. And not one that they came back from their hike or their bike ride irritated, but would feel more refreshed.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual West Trail Study Area plan. Why did the city decide to create one? What's the purpose of creating these?
Well, I think it's a way to look at, you know, how well we did the visitor master plan back in 2005. And in order to really address the different issues in the visitor master plan, we originally had 9 trail study areas, and those were consolidated into 4 study areas, which I've already mentioned. Those, we want to make sure that the ecological values are being retained, if not improved. And we also want to make sure that the amount of visitors and the uses that are there aren't having conflict.
Okay.
So
All right.
I think it's an important thing. You asked about a number of people coming
Yeah.
to our open space from outside of the city. And when we started a green tag program back in 2005 with the Visitor Master Plan, we have over 20,000 green tags now that people use for dogs. And the green tags is kind of an educational program for dog users, people who want to have their dogs on voice and sight,
Right, right.
on an off leash on open space. Less than 50% of those are City of Boulder users.
Okay, interesting, interesting. So what were the most significant decisions that were made when council approved the West TSA?
Well, I thought it was really, it was very interesting. I think all nine council members did an incredible job at really looking at this. They may have had positions when they started off, but I think each and every one of us took it very seriously, listened to all the different groups, and went out on ground and saw for ourselves, you know, what the conditions were. So when we started our discussion, we really started with more on a policy level and things that we think we need to address in the whole open space policy discussion. The main decisions we made, we came to pretty much a unanimous decision, which I thought was pretty incredible.
So it was a good thing.
It was a very good thing. This is the sixth council that I've had the pleasure to be on, and I would say this is the most diverse political council I've ever experienced.
And yet they came to a unanimous decision.
We came to a unanimous
So what were some
decision.
of the big parts of that decision?
Well, I think there were many of us who had this issue of, you know, are we loving our open space to death? And how do we address that? And how do we avoid user conflicts? We all came to unanimous agreement that the trails that had been recommended for dog-free, we didn't think that those were the right ones.
Okay.
We came to unanimous decision that, you know, there was not a north-south connector for mountain bikes that
Okay.
would work. We came to unanimous decision that maybe we need to look at horses, and they're the one user group that is allowed off of space, off
Okay.
of trail. We came to unanimous decision that we really needed to curtail the use of undesignated trails, social trails. And one of the ecological values we were trying to achieve was defragmentation of the open space. And as you are well aware, the more fragmented piece of property becomes that's wild land, the less integrity it holds for its ecological values.
Well, so you raised some topics that I was about to ask, which is, if you look at the open space in the city of Boulder, I think almost everyone agrees that it's a tremendous value. We all love it for a variety of reasons. We love the views that it provides. We love the ecological values that it provides for us. But beyond that commonality, people look at it a little differently. Some love just having it there and knowing that it provides a buffer around the city and helps to shape kind of an urban core, makes us very distinct from other cities. And that's enough. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, there are those who really intensely want to use it. We have the rock climbers, we have the hikers, we have the mountain bikers, we have equestrian users that you were talking about. So in terms of the decisions that council made, how did those users or even those non-users fare? Were they happy with the decision? Were there some concerns that you've heard since then?
I think probably the one group that wasn't, and was rightfully somewhat surprised, were the horse users. And I think, you know, and I was thinking about this and getting prepared for this interview today, and I think if we had had a little bit more conversation maybe with the Open Space Board of Trustees or the CCG, we might have had a better understanding of how they came to their decisions on the horses. But as you know, when we looked at our maps, all the users were now being required to be on corridor or on trail, and except for the horses. And so when you look at this map and it says that the horses can go everywhere and that they can go from outside their back door, this is a principle that isn't applied to any other user. And so we saw, I think, a disparity with that user. I don't think we were necessarily trying to pick out the horses. And council is going to have another discussion on the access of horses.
Okay, okay.
But I think there's also a real misunderstanding out there by the horse user group, and that is that council's trying to take horses off of open space, which is absolutely not the case. And in fact, we added new horse trailer parking spaces, and we added additional trails for horses to use.
Okay.
So
So let me ask you one more question in this regard. So beyond the West TSA, there was a lot of issues that were discussed that really apply equally to the entire open space, not just the western part of the city. One of the questions that some people have asked, they certainly have asked me, is the city owns 45,000 acres or more of open space. And so people will ask, when is enough enough? When is the city going to stop acquiring open space and shift towards devoting that money towards improving, maintaining, developing perhaps more access for the existing open space? How do you respond to somebody who asks that question?
well, number one, I would say that we have an accelerated acquisition plan. And so if somebody wants to know what our plan is, they can go to and look at that. The other question, the other response is that we're still buying open space, and it's important for ecological purposes, but it's also important for potential developments that may occur outside of the city of Boulder, but have severe economic, transportation, and environmental impacts on the city of Boulder. So our goal has been to extinguish any of those development potentials that could seriously jeopardize our revenue sources and our economic integrity. And we can't, we just can't have that.
So we're not done yet.
We're not done yet.
It's interesting because it's really hard to convince a public who assumes that area that's not developed is already protected, and saying, well, it may look green, it may look open to you right now, but it's in private hands and it can be developed. So it really does require a lot of foresight, a lot of background information on really the ownership parcels.
Right.
So.
And I think, you know, it's not like we just see a piece of open space and say, hey, we're going to buy that.
Right.
This has a lot of serious thought and decision making that goes into what's the environmental integrity of that land, you know, what are the rare species that might be on it, what could be the potential recreational use
Developmental
for that,
potential.
the developmental. Right. So these considerations go through the Board of Trustees, through the staff, and through the City Council. And they're not just willy-nilly decisions. They're a long time in the making.
We've been speaking with Councilmember Lisa Morzel about the recently approved West Trail Study Area Plan. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk about open space.
We'll be right back after this with Jody Jacobson.
Many crimes committed in Boulder are crimes of opportunity. You can greatly reduce a criminal's opportunity to hurt you by following some simple steps. Always be aware of your surroundings. Don't limit your ability to hear by wearing headphones or talking on a cell phone while walking or jogging. Criminals don't want to attract attention. Your voice can be a powerful weapon in preventing or interrupting an attack. You hold the key to your own safety. You can make a difference.
Welcome back to Boulder View. Joining us today is the city's Urban Wildlife Coordinator, Val Matheson. Val's here to talk to us about bears and mountain lions in and around the city limits and what the city's role is to help manage that. Thanks for being here today, Val.
Happy to be here.
So I think it's no surprise to most people that living this close to the foothills, we see a lot more large animal interactions. And it being spring, we're probably going to start hearing a lot more about sightings for bears and mountain lions. I know recently you were at the City Council talking about what the city's supposed to do with bears and mountain lions in and around the city limits. Can you tell us more about what the purpose of, what's City Council's role or what's the city's role in managing bears and mountain lions?
Sure. We went to City Council because we're in the process of developing the bear and mountain lion management plan. It's part of the Urban Wildlife Management Plan. It's one chapter of it, and we're at the middle phase. So we've already, the first phase was identifying issues, which we did last year, and now we're working on the analysis, or what can we do about those issues. And that's why we went to council, to get some feedback and direction on what we can do with this Urban Wildlife Management Plan.
So they didn't adopt a formal plan yet. They were just giving direction.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't, and we're hoping to have a plan by the fall of this year. But now that we've gotten that direction on what to do with it, we're going to start drafting it in the next few months.
So you said it's part of the Urban Wildlife Management Plan. So right now you're just looking at bears and mountain lions, but what do we mean by urban wildlife? Is that all animals or just mammals, or?
Yeah, it's basically the mammals we see in town, and it ranges from the large bears and mountain lions and deer to raccoons and fox and things we see in town. And we have an urban wildlife management plan. That vision was identified or accepted by council back in 2006, and one component, which was prairie dogs. And so now we're going to develop the rest of the plan based on what's happening in the city and our highest priorities, which right now is black bear and mountain lions.
Oh, interesting. So black bear and mountain lions are higher priority than prairie dogs right now?
Well, now we have the prairie dog management plan, so at least we have a plan that we're implementing, and so we're developing our next plan. They're both still pretty important in town, don't get me wrong.
And then what comes next?
We don't know, and after we have this developed, there's talk. Deer have been a challenge, a safety issue, and maybe something we could think about more broadly, or other municipalities are developing coyote management plans, so we're not really sure what the next plan is. We're just sort of working on our timeline for black bear and mountain lion now.
So if bear and mountain lion are pretty high priority, they're 1 or 2, right? What makes them such a big priority, and like what is the issue that brought this up?
Yeah, so what we really identified as issues for, they're different. For black bear, it is one, they have a history of getting in trash in the city of Boulder, and since 2003 we've had about 6 black bear destroyed in the city, and about 12 relocated. And we know that bear are getting into trash constantly. So what we're trying to do with bear is think about, why are they in town? What are they getting into? And how can we be better stewards? Or what can we do that's proactive to keep them out of trash that's not healthy for them, and also out of the city where they can come into conflicts with people and are in danger of being destroyed?
So I hear trash, and I know there was talk about, are we going to require bear-proof trash containers? But is trash what is it about the trash-bear interactions we really don't like? Is it that we don't like the trash spread all over, or is it a safety concern?
It's a lot of different things. I think what we're really working with here is a community value that the residents of Boulder value wildlife, and they don't want harm to come to wildlife. So there's one aspect that it's not good for bears to be eating trash, and we find aluminum foil and cellophane in scat, or that's left behind. We don't want them sick. We also don't want them destroyed, and if the Division of Wildlife determines that a bear is a nuisance or a public safety concern, it can be destroyed. And though they work very hard for that not to happen, in the city that's an issue. We also don't want trash sprayed around, and we don't want the potential for public safety to be compromised because of these big mammals being in town. So there's a lot of reasons why it's not a good idea to have them in town.
So you mentioned the Department of Wildlife, the DOW, might have to get rid of a bear if it's a safety concern. I've always heard the 3 strikes rule. Is that a real rule?
So it's, I can't really speak to the division's policies, but they will ear tag a bear that's been a problem and relocate it. And if that bear comes back or is again an issue, it will be destroyed. And I know there's a variety of tools in their toolbox as to how they will address or work with an animal that's a nuisance or a public safety concern. But in general, we sort of think, when a bear's relocated, that, oh great, it was, the problems dissolve. But the truth is, when a bear's been relocated, there's a pretty high probability that it's going to get into some kind of trouble somewhere else once it's been habituated to eating trash and getting into food it shouldn't be eating.
You mentioned the DOW, and I imagine we work with them a lot to help
We do.
mitigate animals.
Yeah.
So what is the city's role? If the DOW is doing the relocating and the euthanizing, if that's important, or in the tracking, what is the city doing?
Yeah, it's a really good point, because it's confusing when we say the city's working on a wildlife management plan, and it's an important point that the Division of Wildlife is responsible for actually directly managing those animals. So you're completely right, they're the ones that do the relocation. What the city's role is, and I would say also the community's role is trying to think about how can we avoid these potential conflicts? What can we do before anything happens that makes a conflict less likely? And that's really what this plan is about. How can we manage our trash better for bear? But for mountain lion, something that's come up is, people are surprised, or say, if I'd known that a mountain lion would come into my backyard on 6th Street and take my small dog, I wouldn't have gotten a small dog. And so there's definitely need for more information and awareness so that people understand that these animals are in town and what the impacts of having them are.
Right, so you mentioned mountain lions, and I was just going to move us over to mountain lions, because it seems like the attractants for mountain lions is very different than bears. You never hear of a mountain lion getting into trash.
Right.
So what are the attractants for mountain lions? Small pets?
Right, I mean, that's one of them. We assume for the most part they're coming in town for prey, but there are other urban features that are also inviting to mountain lions. We live in an arid environment, and a lot of backyards have water features like ponds and waterfalls, and so resources that might be more hard to come by in general in natural areas might be easy to come by in a backyard. So primarily deer is what they're eating, but raccoons, fox, pets like cats and dogs, prey in general, and they're opportunistic. So they're there's been a great study with the Division of Wildlife collaring them, and we are getting a little bit more information about what they're doing. But generally, lions are spending most of their time in natural areas and then sort of doing a swoop through town. And if there's, water or pets or a deer in a right spot at the right time, they'll take advantage of that.
So are mountain lions like bears in that if they find one place that works for them, they'll come back to that one place, or are they just kind of traveling around?
It seems different. That lions, have this large, or at least the lions that have been collared have a very large range, and as I said, spending a lot of time in a natural area and sort of spending less time just sort of going through town and taking advantage of any food resource. But we do see more with bears that we'll have a bear that will be coming down in the season and keep coming down and keep coming down, and once they're rewarded, it's harder, particularly in years where there's not a lot of food in the natural areas, to get the bear to go back and forage in natural habitat.
So it also seems like, I guess from what I heard with community members who were speaking at the last council meeting, there seems to be more fear around the mountain lion, and I don't know if that's warranted or not in your opinion, but people seem to fear an attack from a mountain lion more than they do from a bear, and that's just my perception. I don't know if that's true.
That seems to be the case. It seems that there's a lot more fear associated with lions than with bears, although there have been, I think, 2 people in Colorado killed by mountain lions, and a similar number, maybe even one more, same ballpark, by bear. There's certainly a perception, I think, though, that lions, because they're predators and they prey on animals, that it could be their 2-year-old next, and that's certainly a possibility. The chance is really minuscule. It's really rare that lions prey on people, but it's possible.
So what is the what's the city doing, or the Department of Wildlife doing to help ease that fear or communicate about the study? Is there any communication going on?
I mean, that's one aspect that came up in the issues, is that people do want more information, and the Division of Wildlife and the city has a huge education effort in talking to school groups and kids and adult groups about lion and bear biology and what to do if you see one and how to make your home more safe. So both departments are very active in education. Something that we identified in the issues in developing this plan is we could do more with getting that information out to people in the form of a website or in outreach, just so that people aren't surprised that a lion was sighted at Iris and 30th or some of these areas that there's, I think, a perception that they're kind of staying to the west, where really they are moving through the city.
So is there a website available, or
So
tools now, or that's what you're working on?
We are working on it. We have a website that's www.boulderwildlifeplan.net, where we are now putting up some of that information. The division worked on bear and lion frequently asked questions about bears and lions in Boulder that we have posted, as well as a map of activity. And that's really where our point of information is going to be, or resource. But once our plan is done, we'll develop that a little bit more.
Okay, well, we'll make sure to get that website out. And are there any other last-minute quick tips you can give?
I think one, just sort of emphasizing that the bottom line here in working on these plans is we're never going to get rid of bear and lion, and we're really working to figure out how can we live with them better.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for being here today. That's about all the time we have.
Thanks. It was great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that wraps up another episode of A Boulder View. For all of us here at Channel 8, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.